Everyone, and welcome to the shed. Now, it's a bright and sunny day at the moment in the UK, which is fantastic. But over the last couple of days, we've had some unseasonably wet weather. So that gave me time to bring together a little video that I've been meaning to do for about 6 months now. In fact, all the way through the coronavirus crisis, with regard to a music centre. Now, music centres, not normally my cup of tea, and certainly when I was growing up in our household, music centres were a bit of a dirty word. You know, they were seen as cheap hi-fi and the sort of thing that you'd buy at Woolworths or even a supermarket for 49 quid at Christmas. And that's all well and good. And in fact, some of the hi-fi systems that were around at the time, made by Thorn, sold under the brand of Marconi Phone and Ferguson in the UK, were actually not bad bits of kit. And that technology for sort of 49, 59, 79 quid is still going today. And I see loads of those music centres still on eBay, still in working condition, and frankly sounding an awful lot better than the sort of MIDI system that you could buy from high street retailers in the UK at the moment. But all that aside, the National Panasonic Music Centre, which I came across admittedly now almost 3 years ago, was in an atrocious condition. It had literally been stored in a loft, and the people that I bought it from had moved from London into the countryside, and they'd then put it into their new loft, wrapped it up in bubble wrap and bags and things like that. And they estimated that it had actually been under wraps in a loft since one of their parents died, which is going back to, I think they said 1989. So 1989, and when I bought it, it was 2018, and it hadn't been touched since. And I was a little bit wary about even plugging it in at that time. But what I wanted to do is do a little bit of research on National Panasonic music centres, and where they came from, and the sort of ideas that were happening within Matsushita Corporation at that time to develop a music centre, less about selling it, would you believe, but more about developing the market for good quality hi-fi separates in the long term. And the SG-3090 was one of those trailblazing models. Not only was it developed in a number of different Matsushita factories, so the cassette deck was made within the magnetics division. The turntable was actually a Technics turntable that was re-engineered to fit within a music centre, and the amplification again came from a Technics factory. Now, I haven't been able to find the provenance of the tuner part, but I guess again it came from the Technics stable. So what you actually had is a fusion of different factories or different manufacturing divisions in this one unit. And it also trailblazed a number of different types of technology as well. So it was the first cassette deck that was produced with Dolby B and Chrome tape settings in a music centre environment. It also had amazing touch sensitive controls. And these high touch sensitive controls were used on FM presets, again for the first time, and those presets are actually taken from a National Panasonic factory that at the time was producing exactly the same preset technology, but on televisions in something called Magic Line, which I'll talk about in the next few months or years. So this music centre that I came across was really quite impressive, and I know, having looked on YouTube at lots of other people who are interested in tech from around about that time, still consider the 3090 to be one of the most successful and certainly one of the finest sounding music centres that you can get anywhere. So I started to take a look at how the 3090 was built. I looked again at some of the history, found some service manuals and instruction manuals to try and get some specification. And I set about, slowly but surely, trying to, with the best of my knowledge, to get it into some sort of working order. So I looked through it, managed to get, would you believe, the power on, a couple of flickering indicator lights, and it looked a bit sorry for itself, frankly. And I thought, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try it with an external source first, just to see if the sound stages and the amplification were working okay. And on the rear of the unit, you'll see that it's got a 5-pin DIN input, which was pretty common in those days. And so I popped my Chromecast audio into the 5-pin DIN via an adapter, and connected it to a pair of JBL speakers, monitor speakers, and it sounded incredible. I have to say, I've got all sorts of amplification from brand new solid state equipment right the way back through to a JVC AX2 amplifier, which was one of the first Super A class amplifiers back in the early 80s. And this music center has got a tonal ability, something that I've not heard on pretty much any equipment, any mid-band equipment from that time. And bearing in mind, this music center was sold for, what, £350 in its day? So, okay, it wasn't inexpensive, but it certainly wasn't within the hi-fi separates category. But the sound quality that it provides through a decent pair of speakers is, well, second to none. So that was it. So Chromecast audio, tick. Then we had a look at the turntable. Now, the turntable is actually, I believe, a Technics SG-3 model. So again, it comes out of the Technics stable, and you'll see that when you see the turntable itself, much like a lot of the decks in that time, it had the platter, and then the superstructure, if you like, of the turntable, which was then spring-loaded onto a chipboard base within the music center. Now, this means that it's damped from any of that wow and flutter, or that sound instability that you get by having the speakers too close to it. And again, this one is a belt drive model, and I'm not a huge fan of belt drive turntables. I think speed instability and the longevity of these decks is nowhere near as good as with a direct drive model. But this one has helpfully got a little stroboscope attached to it, so you can check the speed on there. And also checking the wow and flutter device, this turntable does suffer with a little bit of flutter. And despite replacing the belt and oiling the motor, I've not been able to quite get this turntable running as I like it. And I think that whoever the new owner of this will be able to play 45 RPM without a problem, but it's on 33 where I certainly can detect some wow and flutter, particularly flutter on there. So that is going to need potentially a new motor or a new servo system at some stage. But it's clean and it works brilliantly. And I even put a new stylus, a new National Panasonic stylus on there a couple of months ago, and it's, again, when it's playing a 45, it sounds absolutely amazing. And then I had a look at the cassette. Now, as many of you will know, the cassette mechanisms these days are all being sourced from one Chinese factory. But back in the day, in around the sort of mid-70s to early 90s, each individual manufacturer had a magnetics division. And of course, some manufacturers produced incredible quality reel-to-reel, some produced, such as Nakamichi, some of the finest cassette decks in the world. And National Panasonic and Technics produced all of their own heads. They manufactured all of their own heads, their mechanisms, even down to their belts. Everything was quality controlled within two factories, I believe, within Japan. And this cassette deck, you can absolutely see it's from the National Panasonic stable. It uses exactly the same mechanics as you'd find in a separate National Panasonic deck at the time. And of course, as I said before, this one's got Dolby B noise reduction. It's got multiple tape standards on there, VU meters for accurate recording, and even manual recording level as well. So you can absolutely see where the technology has come from, which is frankly absolutely amazing. And I've been playing this. Now, this was a tape which my father absolutely adored. It's a tape that he recorded from Radio 3 back in about 1982, 83. And on this tape is Stefan Grappelli live at the Albert Hall. And it's on a metal tape, so it's not exactly compatible with the National Panasonic deck on the Music Centre, but the sound quality once again is quite simply amazing. And there was a bit of wow, so I replaced the belt in there. So the playback belt is working absolutely perfectly, and the playback quality once again is quite stupendous. And the only thing that I'm noticing is the fast forward and rewind is just a tad slow at the moment. So it may be that it needs a further belt replacement now or in the future. But the actual playback quality is really quite amazing. So I've got a few cassettes lying about, including some of my late father's collection, and it was really great to hear them in such warmth, because that's the best way I can describe the Music Centre. It's got real warmth to it. And then I had a look at the tuner. Now, I tend to listen to a lot of radio, but it tends to be on TuneIn or another online platform. So I'm not used to listening to FM or medium wave apart from in the car. Now, where we live, we're miles away from a transmitter, so FM and AM is pretty hopeless here. But this thing is actually incredibly sensitive as well. So certainly when you're tuning to some of the BBC stations that are broadcast maybe 30 miles from here, this thing receives them perfectly in stereo without anything more than a piece of wet string up the wall, which I find incredible. The flywheel tuning method, so I gave that a bit of a tweak. It's an original flywheel tuning method, but it still swings and moves exactly as you'd expect. And also there's an LED indicator on the tuning dial as well, so you can see exactly where you are day or night. So, as I mentioned before, one of the other things that this tuner has is some preset FM radio buttons on the front. Now, these are delightful. They're touch sensitive, and they're stainless steel capacitive touch sensitive devices. Now, these were used a little bit around about the late 70s and early 80s, and they were incredibly high technology items at the time. So they required no physical push buttons, no solenoid controls, but they were a way of selecting channels on both televisions, as I mentioned before, from National Panasonic and a number of other providers, and on some tuners and other receiving equipment from the time. Now, in a majority of houses and in a majority of countries, they were absolutely fine, and they were seen as I say, high technology items. But in some Southern Hemisphere countries, and indeed in some households in Northern Europe, where there's more ambient damp, they arced. Now, they didn't arc and create sparks and then created damage to the equipment in any way, but they actually swapped stations mid-program. And strangely enough, on a number of tapes that I've been listening to, you can actually hear where stations that are recorded on air automatically flipped over to another station, and then you can hear a few seconds of that recording while someone quickly flicks them back. But once that arcing had actually started to happen, it was very difficult to stop it happening because it relied on the ambient dampness in the air. So once it had started, it was difficult to stop. And that was one of the reasons why certainly televisions stopped using that technology in the early 80s, because people found that they were just sitting down to watch Coronation Street, and before you know it, it was flipped over to the other side watching This Is Your Life or whatever. So it wasn't seen as a permanent technology. And of course, in fact, electronic solenoid controls took over, remote controls took over, and therefore there was no need for this type of touch-sensitive tech. But it was something that happened. It was derived in a television factory in Matsushita Corporation. It was something that happened for a very limited period of time, and it was incredibly omnipresent on technology around that time. But as quickly as it came, it went away, and the arcing was the real reason behind it. So back to the SG-3090. So what I wanted to do is have a look at the amplification within this unit. And the amplification, would you believe, is almost identical to a number of Technics amplifiers that were on sale around the time for around about 150 to 200 pounds in the UK. So bearing in mind this item was sold for around about 350 pounds, the amplifier alone within there would have retailed somewhere between 150 and 200 pounds. So you can see that potentially this music centre was going to be a loss leader for these manufacturers. It was there as a stalking horse. It was there as a way of putting the brand out there and the sort of the technological concepts within the brands out into the market, particularly in Northern Europe, where there was a huge market just waiting to buy technology like this, particularly at the start of the new decade, at the start of the 80s. So the amplification is, just as I thought when listening to it, really, really quite superb. It's got two speaker outlets, or two pairs of speaker outlets, so you can put maybe speakers in a different room, which is something that was quite common in that era, maybe into a dining room or to a kitchen or to an upstairs room even. I believe it's got 25 or 30 watts per channel, RMS. So it's not incredibly powerful, but it's got an awful lot of welly behind it. And certainly when driving HBrook HP2 speakers, or the JBLs that I've got, or a pair of relatively new Wharfdales, more on that later too, it seems to have enough welly behind it. And as I say, it sounds really quite superb. Speaker outputs are via the old-fashioned 2-pin DIN, and for the lucky person that's going to buy this unit, hopefully, then I've put some connectors in there onto 79 strand cable, so it'll make it easy to connect to whichever speakers you decide to plug it into in the future. Now, I'm selling it because it's been a bit of a labour of love. It's, to be honest, it's big. You know, it's a big old unit. And whether or not I keep it in the shed, whether or not I keep it in the house or in my office, it is taking up too much space. And I want to move on to start looking at some projects that I've got pending on some Super A amplifiers from JVC and Technics. So I really need to move this on now. And you know, the cover that it comes with, so the dust cover, is in almost perfect condition. As I say, it's got a new stylus. It's absolutely waiting for someone to take it to the next level. And the next level, I potentially mean doing something about that turntable. If you want to play records on it, despite it having a new stylus and everything, that motor, I think, is going to need a tweak at some point in the near future. But it's an incredible piece of kit. It's come to be part of the furniture, and of course I am going to miss it, but I think for someone who wants to really hear what technology was doing at the time in a single piece music center unit, which was so decried by many audiophiles at the time, it's well worth a look. And I think it would suit, you know, somebody that's looking maybe to have a bit of a contemporary home from that era, or even as a prop designer, so someone who actually wants to place it in a prop in a TV series or a movie or something similar. I think it would go down an absolute treat. I will brasso the lid to make it nice and shiny, and of course I can package it up to send it anywhere in the UK. I can deliver it to you if it's within 50 miles of North Somerset, or of course you can come and collect it as well. So it's going to be a bit of a sad goodbye to the SG-3090. If I had more space, I'd certainly be keeping it. It's been fascinating to try and find out the provenance of the unit, and that's what I want to try and do on this channel moving forward. It's trying to understand why technology was developed, and some of the pieces that I've got coming down the line are very much vanity projects from that time. So they're very much created because manufacturers could do it. Whereas this music centre was designed by bringing different divisions and factories together within a large corporation and saying, if we took mid-band components from all of these different divisions, what could we create? and they created the SG-3090. So I'll be forever thankful to those in Matsushita who developed this, because it's been an absolute treat to listen to it. I very much hope that it goes to a good home, somebody that wants to appreciate it for the longer term and to maintain it in the condition that I've managed to restore it to. But as I say, now it just needs somebody with a little bit more technical knowledge to take it to the next level. So whether or not you're just listening to or watching this video because you want to hear a little bit about how Matsushita brought lots of people together to create these items, or of course you're interested in buying it, I hope you've found it useful, and well, I look forward to hearing from you soon. Have a great day and enjoy the weekend. Bye.